Hello guys, this is Real Recaps. In this video, I will talk about a 2014 romance family film, Black Panther, the story of Emilie and Jacob. Before we start, I hope you will like and subscribe to the channel. Emilie and Andreas arrive at an old holiday house, a place seemingly abandoned, filled with dust and shadows. Emilie instinctively begins cleaning, reacquainting herself with the familiar but worn surroundings. As she works, she notices her brother Jacob outside, holding a skateboard. She steps out to greet him, and they embrace, reuniting after time apart. Andreas joins them, greeting Jacob warmly, acknowledging the closeness shared between Emilie and her brother. That night, a noise awakens Emilie. She finds Jacob awake, wearing headphones and listening to music in the dim room. The next morning, Andreas is on the phone discussing the possibility of selling the house. Emilie listens, affected by the weight of the decision, and afterward, Andreas comforts her, offering a reassuring hug and promising they'll get through this difficult time. They begin packing, taping boxes and sorting belongings to clear the house. Andreas asks Jacob to start in the kitchen, but Jacob remains silent, meeting Emilie's gaze before walking away without a word. Jacob leaves the house and skateboards to a nearby shop, where he picks up a magazine and quietly returns. Emilie and Andreas share a tender moment before Andreas departs for a work trip, leaving Emilie and Jacob to continue the task of sorting through their family home. While driving, Andreas sees Jacob walking along the road and pulls over to remind him to look out for Emilie during this challenging time. He hints at how much Emilie has sacrificed for him and their family, urging Jacob to show his appreciation. Jacob returns home, where Emilie asks if he's been practicing skateboarding and if he's already a professional. Jacob responds affirmatively, then adds that Emilie doubts he'll sign the contract to sell the house, insinuating that she's financially troubled and no longer understands him. Emilie, surprised, reminds him that they've discussed selling the house and that he'd receive his share. Jacob, however, insists he doesn't want the money. In his room, Jacob reads the magazine and overhears Emilie on the phone discussing preparations to clear out the house. He listens closely, but Emilie notices him and ends the call. Later, as it rains, Jacob hands Emilie the magazine, mentioning an article about a black panther recently sighted in the area, killing livestock. She reads it and hears a growl, laughing as she accuses him of pretending, though he denies it with an innocent expression and pulls his hood over his head. When Emilie heads upstairs, Jacob follows, and she's startled as he pretends to be the panther, growling playfully. Jacob walks slowly, and the floorboards creak beneath him. He notices the door to Emilie's room is open and glances inside as she removes her top, followed by her undergarments. Outside, Jacob tries to start an old motorcycle, but Emilie tells him it won't work. He optimistically says he'll get it running so they can take a trip together. Once he gets it working, they ride the motorcycle to a lake, where they lie beside each other and Jacob points out distant mountains, speculating that their parents may have passed there. On their way home, they see a man with a cap walking alone on the road. The next day, Emilie goes through closets to pack her parents' clothes, even trying on her mother's dresses. She shows Jacob an outfit and asks him to look at their father's clothes. Emilie then dresses in their father's clothing and playfully imitates him, though Jacob insists that doesn't resemble their dad. Suddenly, Jacob tells her that their dad knew about them being close. Emilie freezes mid-button, stunned, as Jacob falls silent. Later, the siblings hang laundry together, and an intense moment builds between them as they touch each other through a blanket. Sitting and gazing at each other, Jacob leans close to Emilie, touching her face without quite kissing her, instead holding her neck as she reaches for him. Emilie then wakes up to see Jacob asleep in the chair next to her. They go for a walk in a grassy field, recalling memories of their childhood with their parents, and fall asleep under a tree in the forest. As they doze, they hear footsteps and noises as hikers pass by with dogs, trying to scare away any sign of the Black Panther. They walk along together until they reach a spot where they gather wood to build a temporary shelter. They sleep there, then resume their hike the next day, playing and climbing rocky hills. Back at the house, Emilie catches Jacob undressing, and they share a charged moment as they undress and reach for each other, eventually becoming intimate. Afterward, they go to a bar together, where Emilie asks if Jacob has met anyone special in such places. He says he has but never pursued anything further. Emilie jokes that they never truly got to know each other, then moves to another seat, smiling as she gestures for him to join her. They playfully act like strangers meeting for the first time, and Jacob asks if he can kiss her, leading them to share a kiss. They spend the day acting as if they're strangers in love. Emilie receives a call from Andreas but ignores it, lying back in the grass with Jacob and saying she'll call Andreas back. Jacob asks about her business, and she admits they're in debt but says she doesn't regret taking over the company, as it wouldn't have survived without her. As they walk back to the house, Emilie and Jacob notice a man inspecting the area. He introduces himself, verifying their identities, and explains he's there to look over the property. Emilie tells him it's not a good time, saying she wants to spend more time with Jacob and that he should contact her husband, Andreas, instead. She starts to call Andreas but hesitates, setting her phone down. She then crawls over to Jacob, who is lying down, and playfully tickles and bites his feet, trying to annoy him as he attempts to sleep. Ignoring his requests to stop, she keeps pulling his pants and bothering him until he finally gets on top of her and firmly tells her to quit, and she finally stops. In the morning, Emilie wakes to find Jacob already up. He tells her he wants to move to America with her, but Emilie laughs at the idea. Jacob insists they could start a new life there, but Emilie dismisses it as childish, telling him he doesn't even know what he wants, and she goes back to sleep. Later, Jacob, feeling hurt, sits outside and asks why Emilie mocks his plans. Emilie insists that his idea is unrealistic, which frustrates him. He challenges her by asking why it wouldn't work and expresses his confusion over why he's even at the holiday house with her and Andreas, as he's not interested in the property. Feeling stressed, Emilie sits with her hands in her hair and tells Jacob that if he doesn't sign the agreement to sell, she'll lose her company. Jacob, unmoved, tells her that it's her problem, not his. He accuses Emilie of leaving him behind to manage the company alone, despite their initial plans to leave together. Emilie breaks down, saying she's taken on so many responsibilities and feels abandoned. Jacob tells her she's just afraid, leaving her to cry alone. That night, the man with the cap ventures into the forest, preparing his camera in hopes of spotting the Black Panther. Meanwhile, Emilie, unable to sleep, sits by a bonfire, lost in thought. When morning arrives, Andreas finds Emilie sprawled on the bed. He wakes her and asks if she listened to his voicemail. She hasn't. He informs her that Lemata, the visitor from before, wants to buy the house and expects them to vacate by the afternoon. Emilie agrees, and when Andreas asks where Jacob is, she says she doesn't know. Andreas begins packing in a hurry while Emilie appears uncertain about everything. Jacob eventually joins them, greeting Andreas, who asks where he's been. Jacob says nothing, and as he packs his belongings, Emilie watches from the doorway, questioning what he's doing, but he doesn't respond. Jacob steps outside with his skateboard, and Andreas updates him about the potential sale of the house. When he brings up signing the contract, Emilie surprises them by announcing that she doesn't want to sign it. She explains that she wants to stay in the holiday home with Jacob. Andreas, taken aback, listens as Jacob responds, telling Emilie he can't continue with their current situation. He asks to see the contract and signs it, committing to selling the house, while Andreas looks on, confused. Jacob leaves the house, and Emilie, stunned, follows him, begging him to stay. Jacob reiterates that he can't go on as things are, but she embraces him and pleads. Andreas catches sight of them, unable to watch any longer. Emilie falls to her knees in tears as Jacob walks away, leaving his skateboard behind. The house now empty, with only a few pieces of furniture left, Emilie and Andreas drive away in silence. They eventually stop, and Andreas steps out. Emilie, still conflicted, grabs the contract, signs it, and then exits the car to walk off alone. Andreas notices the signed contract, starts the car, and drives away, leaving Emilie behind. The end. Thanks for watching.